This is interesting to me. I was going to say amusing. I guess it's not amusing. It is somewhat amusing as well.
What you got?
So another campus newspaper that's represented today. We have the Brown newspaper, the UCLA newspaper. We have the Columbia newspaper.
And there's another one.
We have the Dickinson newspaper.
Michael, why do we have the Dickinson newspaper?
I felt obliged to put this story in the newsletter.
I'm not sure it deserved it.
The class of 2024 deserves better than Mike Smerconish.
Okay, so already some shoddy reporting, but go ahead.
So it's an opinion piece by an undergraduate at Dickinson where I am soon to deliver the commencement address. Now I think I have to rewrite my commencement address. Right, essentially wanting to cancel me.
Right.
They deserve better than me. By the way, I agree. They deserve better than me.
I think you said that before this was written, just to be clear.
Not for these reasons.
Not for these reasons.
Not for these reasons.
Not for these reasons.
So listen to this. Last month, the president's office announced that the upcoming commencement speaker is Mike Smerconish, who will also receive an honorary doctorate of public affairs. Thank you for that. Maybe they'll have to mail it to me.
Wait,
I don't know.
Do you think that her use of Mike is deliberate in some way to belittle
you? As a pejorative?
Yes. Or is it just sloppy?
I don't know. I hadn't thought of that.
I mean, it's one or the other.
Well, how about this? Smerconish is a prolific political commentator with media spanning across his eponymous radio show, a daily newsletter, his own program on CNN, a live performance, and 7 books. Few political commentators have had such a successful career. Thank you very much. So why does Dickinson deserve better?
Well, that's the good question. Why?
Because in 2004, Smerconish released the book Flying Blind: How Political Correctness Continues to Compromise Airline Safety Post 9/11, in which he argues that in order to keep America safe, the TSA should deliberately target Arabs and Muslims for searches because they look like the perpetrators of past terror attacks. And then there are excerpts from the book. I think one thing I'm going to have to do now in light of the controversy, and I'm not even sure if it is a controversy, I'm going to need to reread the book.
Do you remember what you said? Are the charges legitimate? Do you agree with words you wrote that many years ago? 20 years ago.
20 years. It's a 20-year-old book. I mean, of all of the things I've said and done in the interim, is there not a better example of why I'm unworthy of this honor?
Yes. And it's just a matter of time before all those come out.
To have a hot mic in front of you for 15 hours a week and an hour each week on live television and all the other appearances that I make and a daily YouTube and the newsletter and the 2 podcasts, there's got to be better material than that book.
Yeah, but someone who refers to as Mike Smerconish isn't going to find that.
They're not going to invest the time to read it.
Correct.
But it's made me think about Flying Blind. May I just reminisce with you for a moment?
Yes, let's. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on those thoughts. Like, that's kind of interesting to think about. Okay, now you look back 20 years.
Well, what I remember is that in the immediate aftermath of September 11, by the way, I am going to go back and reread the book.
I know you are.
I've written 7 books, and this is the oldest of them. And about this book, it's the only book that I never set out to write. It was all serendipity. At a time when our kids were young, and I want to say like 4, 6, 8, or 6, 8, 10, and then there's an age gap to our daughter, so she was probably 15, 16 at the time. It was our habit, our custom, kind of makes me nostalgic. We would spend every spring break in Florida.
I was there for these days.
That 1 week.
Yes.
Okay, and this was in the immediate aftermath of September 11, and I remember that during one of the trips to Florida, my eldest son, who would then only have been 6 or 8 years old, was singled out for secondary screening at the airport. And I was carrying something that looked like a nuclear device, which was the Comrex Matrix, which we used for remote broadcasting
with various cords
and wires and looking very explosive, right? The point is they ignored Dad with the explosive device, and instead they singled out my son, and I didn't complain about it, and it happened on the flight to Florida and the flight back from Florida, which happened to now I've got airline security on the brain because I think they're wasting a lot of effort if they're ignoring the guy with the nuclear football and they're concentrating on the kid, right? At the time, it coincided with, this is all from my memory, I truly have to go back and reread the book of the chronology, but it coincided with the 9/11 Commission hearings. And in a particular hearing, you will remember this, Condoleezza Rice was testifying. John Lehman, a 9/11 commissioner from my native Bucks County, who was the John McCain appointee on the 9/11 commission, was questioning Condoleezza Rice and asked her, are you aware of the fact that there's a DOT policy that precludes the questioning of more than 2 individuals at once during random screening who are of the same ethnic background?
Are you aware that it was the policy and remains the policy? I can hear him saying it.
Look at you.
I can
Yes.
actually hear him saying
By the way, in the back of Flying Blind, I don't know if this copy does. Oh, it does. It does. In the back of Flying Blind, we actually had a CD.
Yeah.
Do you remember this?
CD.
This is called a CD.
I remember because I burned them.
Kids, you would put this on a phonograph-style player and you would listen to it, but you wouldn't need a needle, right? But we had all of the audio that was the background for the book.
Because there was specific reasons why this was in your head and part of the news.
Okay, I'm telling too long-winded of a story, but what do you mean, right?
Right. No.
So I now interview John Lehman, and I say, because nobody picked up on this.
Yeah.
And I said,
that was a very
what were
deliberate
you talking
question.
about when you asked Condoleezza
and
Rice?
We got him at like Easter at his farm in
I remember
Bucks
it so well. There was
taped it.
livestock in the background. I heard sheep.
Yes.
Okay.
I remember this.
So I questioned John Lehman. He tells me a story, and he says, yeah, we've had testimony about how there is this DOT, Department of Transportation policy.
And the reason, of course, and I maybe need to remind someone who perhaps was
tell the Dickinson
not even
undergrad.
born then.
Go ahead.
Not even born then.
Right.
That the reason this was of import is that in all of our heads and hearts were the fact that 3, 4, 5 men, terrorists, boarded airplanes all at the same time, took control and killed 3,000 United States.
Way to go, TC. Yes.
People on the United States soil.
Yes,
so
and
that's why it was important.
And there were 19 of them. And what did they have in common? Their ethnicity, among other things. Young, male, they were Arab. Okay, it was. Now, so imagine this now.
It's not like you were just saying that out of the blue. I think that's why this is important.
I'm processing the fact that my son has been singled out. His father was ignored, even though I had what would look like a suspicious-looking device. Now I learn of this DOT policy because I'm paying attention to the 9/11 Commission. I interview John Lehman. He tells me the story. I write it up. What I wrote up for, I think at the time, the Daily News, I was a columnist for the Daily News, goes the 20-year ago equivalent of viral.
Right.
And now, because the DOT came out, I don't know if you remember this, and they issued a statement and essentially said that I was full of it.
Like that didn't exist.
Now I was like a dog on a bone.
Right.
Now I was like a dog on a bone, and I kept pursuing this.
By the way, an appropriate way to use the word dog.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I was now in pursuit of this story without any eye toward a book, but just because they had challenged my integrity. And the more that I dug, the more that I learned. And I caught the attention of United States Senator Arlen Specter. And let me just go full circle. Before there was a book, I testified in front of a Senate committee and shared all of the findings that I had about this asinine Department of Transportation policy that existed before and after September 11. So much so that Norman Mineta, who was the DOT secretary at the time, called Senator Specter and tried to talk him out of allowing me to testify. It became a huge deal. And so this is also the work that I did that caused me to learn about Jose Melendez Perez, who was this astute inspector at the Orlando airport before September 11, who single-handedly prevented Mohammed al-Qahtani, who would have been the 20th hijacker, from coming into the country. I mean, it goes on and on and on, but this was an enormous chapter of my personal and professional life at the time. And in the end, yes, I wrote a book, and the book is called Flying Blind, and I gave 100%. Here's something that's not in that story. I gave 100% of my author proceeds to the Garden of Reflection, which was then a dream in the mind of Ellen Saraceni.
Was it even a piece of land at that point? Maybe just.
Right. Ellen Saraceni and other 9/11 widows were conceiving of building a Garden of Reflection. And whatever I earned on the book I gave to them, she lost her husband, Victor, who was the captain of one of the flights that hit the Twin Towers.
Because there were how many terrorists on board that had all boarded at the same time and all were from the same
had some
ethnic
things in
background.
common.
Right.
And had some things in common. Right. Yeah. So I'll go back and I'll reread the book, but chances are that given the acquired wisdom of the last 20 years and all the knowledge that I've gleaned and, reflecting on my life's experience, my hunch is I will probably stand behind every single word in the book.